Hi everyone, my name's Daniel and today we're doing something a little bit different. Before we begin, I should tell you that English subtitles are included in this video if you need them, so don't forget to turn them on. Today we're looking at the Sьогодні, англійської мови 2020 and the errors which were made in creating the test. Given that this is supposed to be the official examination for school leavers, there are a lot of mistakes which we're going to look at. Some of these are simple grammatical mistakes, others have problems with syntax, spelling errors, non-existent words, the list goes on. We'll try to analyse why these mistakes were made and how we could say these correctly in English. Okay, so let's start. This first problem comes from listening, task 1, question 5. Answer C is, the girls prefer a style in clothing different from their mothers. This is a very unnatural way of phrasing this point and not one which a native speaker would use. I would say a clothing style, using a compound noun, and while different from is okay, I would say different to sounds better here. This is taken from the listening, task 2. Question 9 is the problem here, and it is a classic Ukrainian speaking mistake. Au pairs are paid extra for cooking for all family members. It's pretty much a direct translation from Ukrainian, and the problem here is for cooking. In this case, we are saying why they are paid extra, and to do this in English, we need to use an infinitive. So the correct construction would be, au pairs are paid extra to cook for all family members. We now go on to reading, where unsurprisingly there are a lot more problems to look at. We begin with task 3, question 17. There are a couple of issues here. Firstly, we have the phrase fully employed MBA. Whilst this exists, it is unique to American English. Giving a phrase like this in an examination, which would be unknown to a speaker of British English, such as myself, I feel is deeply unfair to those who have studied other types of English. I think part-time MBA would be much better, as this is understandable to speakers of all types of English. There are also two problems with capitalization. Downtown has a capital letter when it should not, whereas designed requires a capital letter but does not have one. These next issues come from question 21. Firstly, just look at the capitalization. It's a complete mess. It's almost like someone has done it at random. There are more pressing issues, however. In the second paragraph, the word with at the start of the sentence is a mistake. It should just begin with 3. In the third paragraph, we have experience in training sales agent. The word agent is a singular countable noun, so if it was singular, it should have an article or some other grammatical word with it. However, using the singular doesn't make sense here, and so if we pluralize it to agents, we now have a much more logical sentence. Next, we have set an appointment. This is extremely unnatural. Firstly, the correct verb to collocate with appointment is make, not set. And secondly, we don't usually describe going for an interview as making an appointment. Call to arrange an interview would sound much better. Finally, a small point, but in traditionally correct English, the word resume should have 2 acute accents over the 2 E's, so as to differentiate it from the word resume. Turning now to the full reading tasks, this is taken from the first paragraph of task 5. The final sentence contains a couple of mistakes. Firstly, help should not have the article the before it. This is because here help is undefined and is referred to in general. The second problem is the word motors, which, while I can't say it's completely incorrect, is unnatural. Engines would make more sense here. This is paragraph 4 from task 5. Only a small issue, but again to do with collocation. Here we can see, for fun, I do emails and phone calls. Do emails is absolutely fine, but do phone calls is not a strong collocation. This should be, for fun, I do emails and make phone calls. We now move on to task 6, and almost all of the issues here have a similar theme, namely that these texts are ostensibly written by the hostels, which are based in London, but are written in American English rather than British English. In this first text, however, we just have a mistake rather than any mix-ups between American and British English. In the second sentence, we can see we are an ideal accommodation. The word accommodation is an uncountable noun, and so the article an is incorrect. It should just be we are ideal accommodation. Here we have the second text from task 6, and in the first sentence we have an issue, namely, and facing the River Thames. Because the original part of the sentence uses a finite verb construction, there are two ways we can write this part of the sentence. We can either say, between Pimlico and Chelsea, comma, facing the River Thames, or alternatively we can say, between Pimlico and Chelsea, comma, and faces the River Thames. The use of and facing in this particular context is not correct. The next problem is in the second sentence. We can see featuring bands from all over the city playing. Automatically, in our minds, we would link the present participle clause playing to the noun city, as this is the closest noun in the sentence. Obviously, the author was trying to refer to bands, and so featuring bands playing from all over the city would be a much better construction. On to the Wombat City Hostel London, text 31. Now, bearing in mind that wombats are native to Australia, this would be quite an unusual name for a hostel in London. There are, of course, bigger problems to be looking at here. In fact, this is possibly the most error-strewn text in the whole exam. In the first sentence, we can see the Tower Bridge. This should be Tower Bridge, as the name of the bridge is formed using a compound noun and therefore does not require an article. The third sentence contains two errors. Firstly, the phrase six-storied building does not exist in English. The correct construction would be six-story building. The second problem is the dependent preposition after converted. The correct preposition is into, not to. The fourth sentence uses the construction private shower. Here, shower is a singular countable noun, and as it provides new information to the reader, it should be preceded by the article a. The final sentence contains two further errors. The first problem is all essential information. Here, we are defining the information as being essential, and so we should have all the essential information with the article. The second and final problem in this sentence is going-ons. This pluralized form quite simply doesn't exist. If we wish to pluralize a noun which has a prepositional suffix added, then we normally pluralize the first half of the word. So this means that the correct plural should be goings-on. However, even this is a bit unnatural, and so I think it would be better to say about what is going on in town. On to the Astor Hyde Park, and here in the third sentence we can see the same error as we've made earlier using an article with accommodation. Just to reiterate, accommodation is an uncountable noun, and so it is not correct to use a or an with this word. The next sentence contains a much bigger error, namely the Victorian style character. We can say the Victorian style or the Victorian character, but using both would be a tautology, and so it doesn't make sense here. This is the final paragraph from task 7. There is a spelling mistake here which changes the meaning of the sentence, which is why it's worth pointing out. The error occurs in the first sentence. Here we can see messages flash from neuron to neutron. which of course should be messages flash from neuron to neuron. We do have the word neutron in English, neutron in Ukrainian, but obviously this is not what was intended in this sentence. On to the Caesar salad text, and the first error we come across is a classic Ukrainian speaking mistake. At the end of the second line, we can see was first cooked in the 1920s, referring to the salad. In English, to cook a salad does not collocate, as this refers to other dishes which are hot. The correct collocation would be to make a salad. The second issue here is in the third line with the word restaurateur. This is a spelling mistake, and the letter N should be removed. The correct word is restaurateur. It's worth noting that many native speakers would also make this mistake, and this could perhaps be where the problem first came from. We now move to the egg and spoon race, and as you've just heard, I used the word the with egg and spoon race. Unfortunately, the author did not use the word the with this phrase right at the start of the text, and this is a mistake. In the fourth line, we have the phrase all competitors. This is a Ukrainianism and should be all of the competitors. With the word all, we almost always say all the or all of the. The start of the next sentence is just awful, when the start signal is set off. This is not just some kind of slight slip, this is a phrase which I can't even begin to work out how it was created. I can only assume the person writing this used a translator, not realizing that this was a serious error. There are a few ways this can be rewritten, most simply as when the competitors hear the signal to start, they run at full speed. In the next line, we have the phrase touching the egg with hands. We've already specified that we are referring to the competitors, and so I would use a possessive pronoun here, namely touching the egg with their hands. We have now come to the final text from the reading part about dogs driving cars. Here we can see as our final mistake a classic Ukrainian speaking error, and that is the comma after the word think in the first line. After the word think, we don't need to use a comma in English. I suspect that this text was first written in Ukrainian and translated into English, and they just forgot to take the comma out. The whole text doesn't really flow very well, and this is probably due to it being translated. So these are all the mistakes I was able to find, and quite frankly, it makes me angry that there are so many. Znów anglійської mowy is an incredibly complicated exam as it is, and these errors can just make it even more difficult for candidates to pass the test. The government really should be making sure that these texts are checked properly by competent, well-qualified professionals who can ensure that candidates are not unfairly disadvantaged because of the author's poor English. Thank you, as always, very much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and see you all soon. Bye for now.